Welcome to CityWise. I'm your host, Tiana Stevens. CityWise is produced by the City of Rochester to shine a spotlight on city living at its best. Mending the lives of veterans and their families. That's the mission of the Veterans Outreach Center. And behind its doors on South Avenue, that's exactly what they're doing. The Veterans Outreach Center has been serving those who serve us for 40 years now, offering comprehensive programs and services for our local vets. Todd Baxter, Director of the Veterans Outreach Center, is here with us today. Thanks for joining us, Todd.
Absolutely, pleasure to be here.
40 years. Congratulations on that.
It's a great organization.
Absolutely. Step us through the history of the Veterans Outreach Center.
It was started by Vietnam veterans coming home after the war, really didn't have much support here in the community, so they formed an organization to support themselves and strive towards the benefits they thought they were due. And they started with a very loose-knit group of people that came together, and 41 years later, coming up this year, we're still trying to help veterans get the services they deserve.
Mm-hmm. And the Veterans Outreach Center, there were many more across the country, but Rochester has kind of remained. How did that happen?
Yeah, there was 30, I believe 39 of them planted throughout the United States. We started with the City of Rochester, and then over the years, every one of them has faded away except the Veterans Outreach Center. We're the last one standing in the United States, so we're pretty proud of that fact. A lot of support from the community and a beautiful focal point over on South Avenue of the whole Southwest corridor, so we're pretty excited about where we are and our history.
Mm-hmm. What were the challenges that vets faced back then, coming home from the Vietnam
War?
War?
If you recall the history, they weren't treated well. You know, today we go out to the airport, we go out there with the red, white, and blue. Many people, you know, when a veteran comes home, we celebrate that. Back in the Vietnam era, it was just the opposite. The veterans were treated pretty poorly. They were in a very chaotic time of our country's history, and so you know, it started. It came from that. You know, that whole. You know, they really weren't very trusting of the government. The veterans weren't. So they needed to form a group to take care of themselves. And even though it started with a negative connotation, it blossomed this beautiful positive thing where we're helping 1,000 veterans a year now on South Avenue.
What were some of the services that they needed then?
Well, back then it was really the transitional services. You know, taking what they did in the military, taking their experiences, and some of the trauma that they experienced, both physically and mentally, and then allowing them to transition back into civilian life and be productive members of society. That was the biggest hurdle they had to overcome. Then there's always a homeless issue with veterans. Veterans, especially with some physical trauma or mental trauma, there's always been a homeless issue with veterans. So they tried to address that back then. And of course, education. You know, the GI Bill back then wasn't as prolific as it is today, and trying to get education. So when they come out of the service, that they're marketable into the job field. But so those were the same missions back then, and believe it or not, they're very similar to the missions today of the Veterans Outreach Center.
Right. And how have the services changed over the years?
Well, what we've done is for instance, on job creation, we have a whole organization that works with employers, veteran-friendly employers, and then we try and match veterans and their occupational skills they had in the military with employers that are looking to hire veterans today. And we'll do everything from vocational training, computer training, forklift training, OSHA certification, anything that gives that veteran the edge to get a job, to walk in the door with a resume, have the experience of the military, and translate that experience into what civilian employers want. So we do a lot of proactive work in the world of creating jobs for veterans.
What is the first thing that happens when they walk through your door?
That was probably one of the things that excited me the most about going to the Veterans Outreach Center, that a veteran will walk through the door within 20 minutes. They've only filled out one or two simple pieces of paper, and they're off to a case manager. They meet with a case manager who will screen them. They may be there for simple help with a resume. They may be there because they're in crisis mode and need some emergency services to protect themselves. So within 20 minutes, we got them in the door, and that's the beautiful part about being the Veterans Outreach Center. It's a non-for-profit. We're not tied to bureaucracy. bureaucracies. We're not tied to rules and regulations that might handicap us when we're trying to help veterans. It's us, we're local, we're right on South Avenue, so within 20 minutes a veteran is seeing a case manager.
What sort of identification do they need to bring with them?
We look for photo ID, and we look for their DD-214 or their release papers from the military. Our standards are real low on who we're going to help, if you will. Anybody that served 1 day of active duty in the military is eligible for services at the Veterans Outreach Center, and that's a pretty cool thing from the standpoint you don't have to be on active duty, you don't have to be serving in a combat zone. If you served your country for 1 day, we're going to try and serve you. What are some of the other programs aside from employment, career-based services? We spend a lot of time on homeless veterans and the homeless populations. We have a homeless shelter on South Avenue, 50-some beds, and it's named, one of the shelters is named after Mayor Richard's father, who was a reverend here in the community and helped a lot of folks that were in turmoil in their lives. That's a beautiful place. We have veterans walking in there, maybe just released from a VA hospital or just released from jail possibly, and they need a place to stay, someone secure, someone that gives them structure. So we spend a lot of time with veterans that are in a crisis mode. We also spend time with veterans that are not in crisis mode, but just on the verge of going homeless. You know, they might be having financial issues or legal issues. They may be having a hard time paying their mortgage or just got laid off. They can walk through our door, and we work with them to prevent them from going homeless. So we spend a lot of time in the homeless population or prevention of homeless population.
Right. You also mentioned education. What do you offer for vets on those lines?
One of the first things we do is we can screen a vet with our VA representative that works right there in the Veterans Outreach Center. And what we do there is we look for what they're eligible, what services when it comes to their GI Bill or other services or benefits they may have. We work hand in hand with Nazareth College, Monroe Community College, Rochester Institute of Technology, Roberts Wesleyan, any college in Monroe County. We have direct contact with these folks, so we can steer the veteran towards a school that might be beneficial to them and what their vocation is going to be in the future.
What about wellness, physical and mental?
Yeah, but we don't do physical much from the standpoint. We do have we call them a warm handshake. So if someone walks in and has a physical disability or looking for some kind of physical assistance, of course we'll work with the VA representative and make sure they are started through the process of being evaluated and what they'll be represented by the VA, you know, what their disability may be. But then we'll give them a warm handoff to someone that we know personally that might work with post-traumatic stress disorder. They might work with the physical handicap, traumatic brain injuries. We have folks that are in this community that do that and do that well. So we're more of a conduit to some of those folks. Our wellness program, we do some pretty unique things, and you know, we have counselors there on scene at the Veterans Outreach Center that may work with the veterans and does a lot of work with veterans' families and veterans' kids to just counsel and guide and mediate some issues that may be going through their life from their service. And
right.
So it's a beautiful place.
How do you engage families and children?
Well, first of all, getting them through the door. You know, some people, and in particular the veterans community, they're very proud people, and they often don't like to reach out for help. So our first thing is the outreach. If you notice our name, Veterans Outreach Center, is we spend a lot of time outreaching, going to events, going to the VFWs, the American Legions, going to local colleges, and sharing with folks who we are and what we do, and you know, making it feel like a welcome environment for even the kids. And we have counselors in there that are just fantastic with kids, you know, and they can sit down and an ironic story, a pretty cool story, is a mother called just the other day from Florida. Her son was getting ready to come home from Afghanistan. She wasn't too sure even how to communicate with him. She found us via the web.
Wow. She
called us and we were able to talk her through some things, or you know, show her some pointers, and also maybe hook her up with someone down in Florida that might be able to help her in that transition with her son. So
seems like any sort of need that's out there, the Veterans Outreach Center meets that need somehow, even across many states.
Yeah, across many states, or if not, we got 40 partners here in the Monroe County area that we work with that do things better than us or do things that we're really not designed to do. So if we can't solve the problem, we'll definitely find someone that has an expertise in that.
And what sort of, how many in terms of numbers veterans do you serve locally, and what is the picture in the region? How many veterans are here?
Yeah, well, there's almost 68,000 veterans in the Monroe County geographical area, 5-county area, 48,000 right here in Monroe County itself. And we're looking at that population possibly growing in the future. You know, President Obama said the other day that he's going to reduce the size of the forces to pre-World War II. To us at the Veterans Outreach Center, we want to be prepared for the veterans that are coming home. And make sure we're ready to serve them. So it's a unique population. It's possibly going to be growing in the near future. Annually, we serve about 1,000 veterans, unique veterans. That means first-time stops at the Veterans Outreach Center. So they come in and look for one of those services you mentioned: housing, homeless shelter, wellness training, vocational training, whatever they need. 1,000 unique veterans walk through our doors.
Wow. And you're a veteran yourself.
Yeah.
Then you had a long career in law enforcement, and now here you are at the Veterans Outreach Center. How did you come to the Veterans Outreach Center, and what's your experience been this past few months?
Well, it's been 3 months, and I left a career that I absolutely loved. I love being a police officer here in the city, and I love being a chief in the town of Greece. And so I would never leave anything you love until you find something you're very passionate about. And I found the Veterans Outreach Center, something you can get passionate about. When I seen the homeless shelter, and I walked through the doors there, and I've been to many homeless shelters as a law enforcement officer, but I've never been to a homeless shelter filled with veterans that served their country. And I've never been to a homeless shelter that the lady who runs it, a lady by the name of Judy, her first quote to me was, "This is no flop house." You know, she runs a great ship down there, and it's geared towards veterans who like structure. You know, structure's been built in their DNA since the first day they met their first drill sergeant. So that's really what got me. I mean, these folks have served their country, and they need us to serve them back. And whether you're a law enforcement officer, serving in the military, or serving in a not-for-profit like this, you're serving. And what other calling could you have that could be more honorable than that?
Right. Are all your programs run by staff from the VOC, or do you rely on volunteers? You did mention partnerships.
Yeah. So it's really three-pronged. You hit all three of them. One, staff. I have a staff of almost 40 members, very professional, well dedicated to what they're doing. Most of them probably can make money somewhere else more than they're making at a not-for-profit. But they're there because they love the cause and they love veterans. And so you can't ask for anything better than that. People that are motivated by what they do for a living. The volunteer staff, we have a staff of almost 40 dedicated volunteers that are well trained, and they work almost on a weekly basis, if not more often, consistently. So I almost call them professional volunteers. They're there at least once a week fulfilling the same job task. We saved over $100,000 in salaries last year just by our volunteer force.
Wow.
Being able to come in. And then it's all about collaboration. You know, being able to work with people out there, know people in the community that can solve problems that we can at the Veterans Outreach Center. We have over 40 contacts that we have MOUs, memorandums of understanding with, that we can reach out to with a phone call, with a name, and walk a veteran or even drive a veteran right there. If we can't do it, we know people who can do it for them. So collaboration is key in this day and age.
Right. Is the Veterans Outreach Center open 24 hours? If there's a need after hours, if they're not, what would a veteran do?
Yeah, we're open from 8:30 in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening, Monday through Friday. We are part of the 211 system, so if there's emergency housing issues that we possibly could help out with, we are part of 211. So folks that are trained at 211 have our contact information. If there's an emergency with a veteran, in particular with housing or homelessness, we're often available for them.
Mm-hmm. What is the first thing that happens when the veteran walks through the door?
Well, the first thing is, first they're going to be greeted by one of our fantastic 40 volunteers at our Gallisano Welcome Center. They walk into a beautiful building. It's very welcoming feeling. You're meeting a volunteer, so you're not, it's not the bureaucracy of the federal government or anything. You're meeting a volunteer from our community. They're getting a basic like I said earlier, 2 pieces of paper to fill out with their pedigree information and services they may be looking for, and within 20 minutes they're seeing one of our wellness case managers who will walk them through the whole application process, walk them through our services that we can provide them for, make sure they're not in crisis mode. If they are, we can get them right to help immediately. If they're just looking for simple vocational training or computer training, we can schedule that all within 20 or 30 minutes. They're seeing someone and they're working with someone.
Mm-hmm. And just earlier this month, the mayor declared Home Front Flags Week in Rochester. What can you tell us about that? And you've got your flag pin, of course.
Yeah, of course. And the mayor did a fantastic job for us. She actually did a proclamation for Home Front Flags, which we thought was pretty awesome at the Veterans Outreach Center. First of all, to recognize what was the holiday of Flag Day. We often say it was a forgotten holiday, that most people have forgotten Flag Day. So with the mayor's support and the city of Rochester support, we were able to push that to the forefront with the proclamation, and that's also used as a couple tools for us at the Veterans Outreach Center. One, using that home front flags to bring the idea that when you see a flag, you see the red, white, blue, you think of a veteran who gave you that freedom, who gave you that flag to be able to hang proudly on your house or in front of your house or wave at a parade. So we want flag and veteran to be synonymous. That's one of our goals. And the other one is, we got a lofty goal sometime, and working with the mayor's office and working with folks like the city police department, that I would like to put a flag in every house in the city of Rochester in the next few years on Flag Day.
Wow.
Where we see a house decorated. Talk about a statement to the community. When people walk around or drive around, and this shows that unity of your community. It shows your support of your veterans, and obviously the flag is a very patriotic symbol. So we like to bring Flag Day back to the forefront, and the mayor did a fantastic job helping us out with that.
How do you think the community does as far as supporting the vets?
It's a beautiful thing. It really is. Could we always use more support? Absolutely. And I think a lot of that comes from education by doing programs like this, and we appreciate that. But what I've found in my last 3 months is people have a soft spot in their heart for veterans. People do appreciate what they got here in America, the fact that you can go out and play in a park with your kids, the fact that you can go to the mall and be in peace, the fact that you're living in total freedom. And we beat ourselves up as Americans all the time and say what we're doing wrong or what we could do better. But when you talk about a veteran, people focus on that real quick and go, we understand what the veteran gave us. So it puts the focus back on enjoy what you got, enjoy the peace that you have, enjoy the freedom that you have, because someone paid the price for that.
And recently the VA was in the news making headlines, and you gave some comment on that around local media. What do you think is the next step that needs to be taken in terms of patient care?
Well, first of all, let's be quite frank. Someone needs to be held accountable for what's happening in Phoenix. And if those accusations are true, I think the federal government's doing that right now. They're looking hard at that. The American public has made a statement to their legislators that someone needs to be held accountable for that. And that's the first thing I'd like to say. Second, I always use the Veterans Outreach Center as an example. We have a program over there called the Supportive Services for Veterans Families, SSVF, and that's a grant given to us by the VA to prevent veterans from going homeless. And the key point with that was that was a grant given to us by the VA. The Veterans Administration realized when it comes to homelessness that they're not in the position to prevent or even mediate the problems that veterans are going through with this huge federal bureaucracy. So they took that money and they decentralized that money to local nonprofits throughout America and allowed folks like us to take care of veterans on the home front. And that was a great idea. And what I'm trying to champion is the VA needs to look at that as a model for other things, even healthcare. We have great institutions around here that do healthcare. We got some of the best hospitals in the world right here in Rochester. Yet a veteran can't go to those. They have to circumvent that and drive miles and miles to a hospital. It doesn't make any sense. So I would look for them to possibly decentralize some of that, and give up the power, give up the money to the folks that can do it on the local level, and then hold us accountable, to make sure we're serving the veterans correctly. And it's a great model. That SSVF program is a great model, the way the VA could do it right.
Can you share with us some of the success stories that you've seen at your time at the Veterans Outreach Center so far? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they're precious stories. One of the best stories I have, and this gentleman gets a little annoyed every time I share it because he works for me, a gentleman by the name of Joe Gibson, walked in, U.S. Army veteran, was looking for a little support on his resume building, looking for a little increase in his skills and interview skills. So when he went to an interview, he was better prepared. He did such a good job on the interview that we hired him as an IT specialist, and he actually runs our IT department over it. So you can see right there, maybe he's not in crisis mode, a veteran's not coming in crisis mode, but just those little tangibles, those little extra steps we can give people. He's a great success story. He grew up in the city here, went off, served his country, and now he's serving veterans again as they come back. So it's just that round world thing, the working right there. We see stories all the time. I'll get calls from veterans. I'll be out in the community and veterans will approach me. I had no idea they were at the VOC 10 years ago. These are successful people in our community that you wouldn't think would have any issues. They stopped at the VOC one time, they got the support, and now they're very productive people in the community. And that's just a gorgeous thing. You can't reproduce that feeling anywhere else when you got veterans that are, coming back, being successful in society, and giving back now. And some of them are even volunteering with us today.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any specific programs that are geared towards women or partnerships in the community that you would refer someone to?
Yeah, well, you mentioned a very important one to us, and that's the female population of the veterans. I honestly don't believe we're prepared for the female population. If you think about the military transformed in the last 10 years when female service members were allowed to go into combat. And obviously the structure of the military is changing, and the population of females in the service is increasing every year. What we haven't done on the veteran service side of the world is done a good job being prepared for that. So we are a little behind the eight ball on that front, if you will. We are currently studying. We formed a task force of not just the VOC but other members of the veterans community to look at what's going to be the future needs of the female population of veterans. For instance, the homeless shelter that I mentioned at the VOC, all male. We don't have a bed right now for females, so we just worked collaboratively with the ABW, Alternative for Battered Women. We work with Goodwill. We work with population or other service providers like that might have to assist us with female populations that we're not geared up for yet. But so we're a little behind right now. We realize that, and we need to get our study done. What's going to be the potential need of the female population, and then what are we going to provide, or who can we collaborate with to provide? So that's a very unique one that we're not ready for, and I'm glad you asked that question because it's something we need to get ready before.
You kind of answered my next question, is how does the VOC determine what programs and services are needed, and how do you react to fit that need?
Yeah, and sometimes it's just out of who's coming through the door, and they're telling us through repetition of needs. For instance, job training. Taking a military occupational skill of an artillery person in the United States Army and translating that to job skills or onto a resume, that a civilian employer will be able to interpret. So with that, we understand that we got to do a better job in translating and marrying those two things together. A civilian HR person with a military occupational skill of a soldier, sailor, or Marine, and marrying those two together. So that's just an example. There was a need generated by the people walking through our door. But we need to do a better job also researching, predicting. And this is what I say quite often is, we send guys and gals overseas, or we send them off to war. We do a great job as a military planning those things. How many soldiers, sailors, Marines we're going to need? How many beds are we going to have? How much food? How many bullets?
Right.
They do a great job planning with it. On the same front, they should be planning that we know 3 years from now that these are going to be combat veterans that are going to need services. It's very predictable if you look at the statistics. So we need to do a better job predicting on the other front. When we send these young people off to war, what are the services they're going to need 5 years now? And we got to be prepared for that too.
As far as the wellness services that are offered, art therapy is kind of a newer one. How does that program work?
Well, first of all, I walked in as a cop for 26 years and a veteran, and I said art therapy, and my eyebrows went up, and I go, what is this?
Right.
And then I seen it work, and it's pretty incredible. And the whole idea behind art therapy or any other type of unique therapy is to get the veteran to open up. Get the veteran to say something, be comfortable talking to someone. And believe it or not, art therapy is a great conduit into a veteran. Some of these guys and gals don't even want to draw stick figures when they walk through the door. They have no interest. It also works with the kids. Kids walk in and they'll get out a sandbox with different things in the sandbox, and the therapist will just let the kid play with the sandbox. And based on that might lead to conversations, relationships, and some kind of wellness therapy going on there. So there's some unique ways. These guys and gals are trained well in therapy, and they do a great job of opening up, first of all, the veteran and the veteran's family. And then we can see what we could do to maybe help through the therapy, or even diagnose and send to the right people in other locations.
Sure. How do you keep the community engaged? Does the VOC host events that are open to the public?
Yeah, well, we have 4 huge fundraisers, big fundraisers. Flag Day, just this past weekend, was a great event. We had over 200 volunteers spread out throughout Monroe County, and that was a fundraiser for us, obviously. We collected money for donations of flags, but the other part of that is outreach. Those people were our conduit to the community and sharing our word and what we do, and make sure everybody knows we're on South Avenue. If they have friends or family members that are veterans, to think about us if they need any services. So that was an outreach also. We put on a beautiful dinner in the fall. Hundreds of people come to that dinner, and they hear stories from veterans. They hear real moving stories from veterans that have survived, maybe physically, the war, but haven't survived mentally or having difficulty back here with their family. And that's a great outreach event where we bring members of the community to that, and we bring the veterans and those folks that may not ever touch each other. We bring them together over dinner, and they can talk to each other there and understand each other and hopefully support each other.
And all these events are listed on your website? Yeah,
the website's a great website. It's pretty user-friendly. We encourage you to go to veteransoutreachcenter.org and look at the events we have coming up, look at the fundraisers. We are a not-for-profit, so we're always looking for support on that end. And just be a word for us. Let the veterans community know that we're out there. And if you see a veteran that needs help, point them in that direction. If we can't do it, we'll get someone to help them.
What sort of educational resources are on your website? You mentioned the mom that called from Florida. Is that something that could be accessible on your website as well?
Yeah, and we have a great vocational training site right there in the Golisano building on South Avenue. You walk in, there's computer terminals. It's open to folks. You can take a Microsoft product training. You can take OSHA certification training. If we don't do it, we have collaboration with people. One of the ones I like to share with is we teach people how to drive forklifts. We don't do that on South Avenue, obviously, in the computer lab, but we have, we work with Duke Construction on Jefferson Road, and we send our folks out there. They volunteer the equipment, and they allow our folks to go out there and teach them how to drive a forklift. Sign language, we don't teach it there, but we collaborate with the city school district, and we'll send people over to Hart Street, and they'll get their training in sign language over there. So just about anything. Here's the idea. It's non-for-profit. We're not tied to federal regulations and government bureaucracy. So if someone's walking in and we see a need for it, we can create the training for them if it's going to help them get a job.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
Finally, Todd, something you've learned at the VOC that maybe you didn't know before? even though you're a vet?
Well, you know what? I had left the military active duty. I was 21 years old when I got off active duty, 3 years of service to my country, went right into the reserve system, and the military gave me almost everything I am today. You know, they gave me the discipline, they gave me the sense of service, they gave me duty, honor, all those great things. I didn't have a problem. The military only gave to me, and I was so surprised at how many service members give and give, you know, some of their lives. Obviously, we know that, but also give a piece of their being, give a piece of their heart, give a piece of their life, lose families by serving their country, very traumatic on families. I was absolutely surprised, like I said, when I went to the Veterans Outreach Center homeless shelter, how many veterans are in need. And what better call to try and answer that call to those guys that went for us.
Serving those that served
us. You got
us.
it. The model couldn't be simpler.
Thank you so much, Todd, for joining us today. Again, to learn more about the Veterans Outreach Center, you can go to their website. It's veteransoutreachcenter.org. You can also call 546-1081. Thank you for joining us on this edition of CityWise. I'm Tiana Stevens, and we'll see you next week.